Okay, so we're gonna do a studio tour, but I have a favor to ask you.
You have to be quiet about my cable management.
Because I haven't done any of it. So all of these videos that people have seen from Spain have been recorded on a Scarlett 18i20. They've been monitored using Audio-Technica M30Xs, and then they've been recorded onto a 2015 MacBook Pro. A pretty humble setup, if I do say so myself. The only thing that could be arguably nice in that setup is the Scarlett 18i20. Everything else is pretty budget. But what you guys didn't realize is waiting for me back in the US was a bunch of cool stuff. So yeah. Welcome to my studio. We've got a gaming desk that I found at Big Lots that I brought specifically to Brooklyn. As every audio engineer knows, this raised panel that you'll see on like a lot of gaming desks, super helpful for monitors. So I think the best way to go about doing this would be showing you kind of like the inputs of the studio first. That's going to be the microphones. Then we're going to go through the interface, and then we're going to go through the DAW, and then we're going to go out of the new KRK studio monitors, which I just bought because my other ones were stolen. So by this point, I've amassed a decent amount of microphones just to film and like produce content with, but these are the tried and true 3 microphones I use on basically any video. For the longest time, any voiceover was done using the Shure Sm57. Now you guys probably know me a lot from the Rode NT1, but I only used the Rode NT1 whenever I was displaying the Rode NT1 because the room I was in Spain was not going to be okay for this condenser. That's why I used this dynamic microphone, Shure Sm57. You all know it. Because of how awesome this community is and luckily how much we've grown, I was able to buy the Electro-Voice EV RE20, which is the new voiceover mic. But if I'm ever doing anything with guitar, Shure Sm57. Yeah, this video is going to be a little bit disorganized, but I should probably go over the applications for each one of these microphones. In my collection, if I'm going to be recording anything to do with guitar cabinets, I'm going to be using this Shure Sm57, or as an alternative, I'll be right back, this Sennheiser E609 is my second choice. I know this one is typically used for guitars, and I've done a comparison on them. I just like the Sm57 better. Now, the RE20 also gets used for guitar cabs, but it's almost always being used as an auxiliary in addition to the Sm57. The RE20 is going to be used for pretty much anything whenever it comes to dynamic microphones, but it's typically going to be used for voiceover, and if I ever record a drum kit in here, it'll be used as the kick mic. The Rode NT1 is almost always used for vocals and acoustic guitar nearly 100% of the time. It's amazing at acoustic guitar. And then the RE20 is going to poke its head around for vocals as well. So, inputs, microphones. What am I using? RE20 for voiceover. Shure Sm57 for electric guitar. Rode NT1 for acoustic guitar. Rode NT1 for vocals. RE20 for vocals. RE20 for a kick drum if I ever record a kick drum in this studio apartment. From there, we're going into the audio interface. My audio interface, as many of you guys already know, is the Scarlett 18i20. Now, this is basically just the monstrosity version of a Scarlett 2i2. Or a solo. They're the same things, except for it's repeated a bunch of different times. The Scarlett 18i20 is going to include things like a MIDI out. It's also going to include things like a bunch of different outputs. I think 8. It's got 8 inputs as well. It has pretty decent sounding preamps. It's been my workhorse for everything. I've taken it across the ocean. I brought it to Spain. I brought it back. I even used it as like a DJ router at one point because I don't actually know how to use a board. It has never once failed. It is maybe the most reliable piece of equipment I own. I know there's a 3rd gen now, and I've never experienced the 3rd gen. I don't know how well they work, but the 2nd gen, man, an amazing purchase. So glad I have it. So whenever I get inside the DAW, I'm using Ableton for basically anything creative, and if I really want to work with more detail in terms of audio, I'll export the stems over to Pro Tools. But whenever I'm using Ableton, I am almost always using this little guy right here, the Launchpad Pro. I actually don't typically write on the Launchpad Pro. When I'm using the Launchpad Pro, I'm using it to audition sounds. Oh my God, Brooklyn is so loud. The only time I'm ever really writing on the Launchpad Pro is whenever I'm writing beats. I find the pad buttons to be amazing for writing beats. And when I say beats, I mean drum beats. I'm not talking like a full-on produced beat. I might also use it for the chord mode, but typically I'm writing on guitar, and we're going to go over some of the guitars here in a little bit. Highly recommend the Launchpad Pro. Also, it's an Acer 24-inch monitor. That's about all I know about it. So as I said, whenever I actually get into the DAW, I'm usually using Ableton Live. I've been using 10 basically the whole time this channel's been on, but I've recently updated to Live 11. Beyond that, I'm using Pro Tools. I don't have any experience with Logic, okay? So if you guys want Logic help, I can help you with the basic premise of production, which is probably going to be included in some feature in Logic, but I don't actually know anything about Logic. So once we get out of said DAW, we're going into the KRKs, which I have just now had the pleasure and delight of meeting and learning and hearing about. Yeah, I just got these. Basically, I had a set of JBLs. Let me actually remember the model. Yeah, okay, I had this, the JBL 308P. I don't know why I showed you on the screen. I could easily edit this in. I had the JBL 308P, which I wonder why I didn't remember the name. But yeah, now I got the Rokits. And I'm happy to tell you the differences, but I'm definitely going to be making a full review on these Rokits once they break in a little bit more. What I'm noticing, the JBLs, which are probably one of the first choices for many beginner producers, has a lot more low end, and not necessarily that's a good thing. Whenever we're listening to studio monitors, we don't necessarily want them to be like boosted in any desirable range, right? Like, of course, we want our bass to be very present, and we want our bass to be felt and heard and be a large part of our mix. But we also want the studio monitors that we're mixing on to be really honest. And I found that the JBL, at least in the setups I've had them in the past, were probably a little bit too flattering with my bass. I seem to be having the opposite experience on KRKs. The bass response on them I thought would be a lot higher and a little bit more noticeable. Maybe it's because I'm used to the JBLs, I don't know. But it really actually makes you work for the bass response, and I like that about it, I guess. I'm gonna look up some specs here. 8P frequency response. I'll put this up on the screen for you. Yeah, so many of these studio monitors are going to say something like, oh yeah, we do have a frequency range from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. We cover the whole thing. But that's never true, right? Like, it does go to 20 hertz, but it's covering so much less volume at the 20 hertz level than it is at the 50 hertz level. And then at like the 150 hertz level, there's a dip. And then way up at 20,000 hertz, there's a dip. It's not perfectly flat. Okay, so I'm doing this on the fly, and I'm going to need to figure out a better camera angle than this. Let's see what the KRKs are.
Interesting.
So, flatter across the whole frequency range, not extending all the way down to 20 hertz. So it's going down to like 30 hertz, and it's doing it in a lot flatter way, which means what I was experiencing is true. It's not as flattering with bass. It's not as heavy on bass, but it also doesn't extend all the way down like the JBLs do. So I think I prefer this. Although it doesn't extend all the way down to 20 hertz, and the JBLs actually did, the JBLs had such a little volume presence at the 20 hertz, and then it had this wobbly, crazy bass line, and then it had this wobbly, crazy frequency response on the low end bass, and that was probably pretty misleading for my mixes. So welcome KRKs. All right, I want to show you some guitars. We can make an actual video about this in the future. So I have a few guitars here to show you, not the whole collection, but some guitars. I have this, and this is a 1998 Fender American Standard Stratocaster, back when they were still called American Standards instead of Pro or whatever they call them now. We have this Chapman ML3. Yeah, Chapman ML3 RC. If you guys know Rob Chapman, an old guitar YouTuber, I used to be a big fan, and I found this on Craigslist. This video is a cluster. Now, my pride and joy, really genuinely my pride and joy, or one of them. I have a Gibson Custom Shop 1 of 50 Denim Flame Maple. An absolutely amazing guitar. Let's check out the amps, or the amp. So yeah, this is my actual main guitar amp that I've been using forever. That's just been in the US while I've been down and away. This is the Fender Bassman 4x10. It's a 1990s reissue. It's not an original, but it sounds amazing, and everyone seems to hate the 90s reissues, except for me. Then if we go down by the floor,
Shut up about the cable management.
I do have a Digitech Whammy, a full-tone OCD. I have a Zvex box of rock, and then we go into the modulation, Hall of Fame reverb, profit delay, pretty simple, and then I just have a little ditto looper. All right, I know this was kind of a casual fly by the seat of your pants kind of video. Once I figure out how to make this place look a little bit more professional, get all the camera angles sorted out, yeah, we're gonna have an awesome studio that we can do a bunch of reviews and filming in. Look out for the KRK review. And look out for a very special mic comparison coming up. You can follow me on Instagram at RealAudioHaze. If you would like lessons or you'd like for me to work on a project with you, you can email me at realaudiohaze@gmail.com, and I will see you in the next video.